Donald Trump wants to destroy the European Union. He said so. And more importantly, he thinks he can do it by driving a wedge between and among EU member states. And Meloni should not fall into that trap, obviously.
So back to Donald Trump and Giorgi Meloni. During their press conference, Donald Trump said the US would be the ones leading any agreement with the EU.
I think you're going to see some fantastic numbers when this all happens. It's happening now. I mean, everybody wants to make a deal. And if they don't want to make a deal, we'll make the deal for them. Because that's what's going to happen. We'll just say, this is what it is. But we want to listen to everybody. And I think I can say for Scott and the other people that are working on it that we're listening and we're going to be very fair to people. But, you know, we're the one that really sets the deal, and that's what we'll be doing.
Well, meanwhile, Giorgi Meloni has said Trump has accepted an invitation to visit Rome and that she wants him to help make the West great again.
I know that when I speak about West, mainly I don't speak about a geographical space. I speak about a civilization. And I want to make that civilization stronger. So I think even if we have some problems, okay, between the two shores of the Atlantic, it is the time that we try to sit down and find solutions. So I want to thank President Trump for having accepted an invitation to pay an official visit to Rome in the near future and consider the possibility in that occasion to meet also with Europe. The goal for me is to make the West great again.
Giorgia Meloni there. Well, let's speak to Anthony Gardner now, former US ambassador to the European Union under Barack Obama. He's in Italy at the moment too. Good evening, Anthony.
Good evening.
Look, what do you make of this meeting today? Warm words between Giorgia Meloni and Donald Trump, but some interesting bits to pick up on. What attracted your attention?
Well, Prime Minister Meloni likes to think of herself as a Trump whisperer, but she's going to have to remember a few things, particularly where the interests of Italy lie. She will also have to remember that Italy was the first beneficiary of EU funds for post-COVID stimulus, and that Italy depends crucially on the European single market. So she has to be careful in that she can't just plead the Italian case. She has to also represent her EU partners. She also, I'm assuming she does know, and she's being advised, that Donald Trump wants to destroy the European Union. He said so. And more importantly, he thinks he can do it by driving a wedge between and among EU member states. And Meloni should not fall into that trap, obviously. She does want to protect her export industries. Italy has the second largest surplus of any European country with regard to the U.S. She's going to try to get preferential treatment, but it would be a fool's errand to get that treatment at the risk of splitting the EU.
Yeah, I mean, look, Donald Trump does flip-flop on this, and he's talked up, trade deals, not to a great extent with the EU, but he's certainly not rubbished it. He was asked about his words describing Europe as a parasite. Meloni questioned if he ever said that, and Trump denied it happened. Well, OK, we've had that from him before. But he was also asked about making Europe great again. And he said, I hope that Europe is going to be great again. Europe has gone through a lot of problems, and a lot of it's having to do with immigration. I'm not a big fan of Europe and what they've done with immigration at all. I think they are going to get smart because Europe is being very badly hurt by what they've done with immigration. He says, Europe is very important to me. Europe is very important to the world. I want Europe to do very well. I think they've got to get a lot smarter on immigration. So he's channeling it all into immigration, all of the harsh words he's had to say. Do we interpret that as any kind of warming towards Europe?
No, absolutely not. One thing to say immigration, but he's been very, very clear over many, many years. He considers the EU at best a commercial competitor and an enemy. And well beyond that, he said many times he thought that there should be many more Brexits and that the EU should split. And it's very clear why, because the 27 states together in the EU have much greater leverage as a trading partner than the individual member states. So he doesn't like that, and he doesn't like what the EU represents. multilateralism, support for free trade and so forth. So it goes much beyond, immigration and so forth, where perhaps there could be some kind of a common view. It's much more profound. And to think that the EU is just going to cave and agree to his terms on a trade deal, I think is misguided.
Do you think, and I'm only musing here because of your strong insistence that Donald Trump is anti-EU, no matter what he says, no matter how he channels it, do you think that there would have been any conversations behind closed doors that Donald Trump is speaking to Meloni and saying, look, I'm a fan of you, we know this? He said today he's very proud of her. I mean, I'm not sure he would have said the same to Keir Starmer or a man, but there we go. And had very warm words to say about her. Do you think behind closed doors he would be encouraging Giorgia Meloni to leave Italy, to leave the EU bloc?
Gosh, very hard question for me to answer. I am assuming that he doesn't think it's really going to happen. He may have joked about it, I guess. But look, I mean, Italy, there's no way that she would have entertained that kind of a discussion because she's too smart for that. There probably would have been a discussion about the common interests about anti-woke agenda, immigration you mentioned, the important work that Italy is doing, for example, in different parts of the world. He probably put pressure on her in terms of spending. Italy is one of the lowest spenders in Europe, about 1.3% of its GDP, and she probably would have pleaded her case in saying there are many other things that Italy is doing that's not strictly showing up in the statistics, but yet important for the defense of Western interests.
I'm just reading back through some of his comments as we digest exactly what was discussed in the Oval Office today. He talked about a trade deal with the EU. There will be a trade deal. He says 100%. Of course there will be a trade deal, very much. They want to make one very much. We're going to make a trade deal. I fully expect it. But it'll be a fair deal. And of course, that has to determine what fair means. I mean, Italy is sort of one of the worst offenders, really, when it comes to trade with the EU and trade with the United States and pumping more into the United States than they accept back in return.
Wait a second. Hold on.
Go on.
A lot of American consumers happen to like Italian wine and cheese and beer and a lot of other products. Mm-hmm. It would be a bit odd to say the fact that American consumers love those products is an indication of cheating or unfairness. So I wouldn't accept that premise at all.
Well, he says it's got to be fair, and this is nothing against Italy, but Italy export much more to the United States than they import, and Donald Trump's interpretation of fairness, he's said this before, is that it's equitable, essentially.
Yes, I'm sorry, but trade deficits are not a clear evidence of cheating on either side. The average tariffs, and remember, Italy doesn't set the tariffs, the external tariffs, the EU does. The average tariffs are actually quite low, with some tariff peaks, but on average about 3.5%. So this is not the issue. The issue is American consumers happen to like a lot of Italian products, including fashion. And by the way, Italy buys a lot from the United States. Yes, it is a massive surplus and growing. But again, trade deficits are an indication of not of cheating, but of, I would say, macroeconomic imbalances and the fact.
Well, yeah, it isn't. I'm not saying Italy's cheating. I'm just noting that Donald Trump wants to make this fair. Actually, what he also says he wants to do is he wants Americans to drink wine from America, from California, rather than from Italy. So so he's sort of wanting two things here. He's wanting it to be fair, and he's saying, well, if you put a tariff on us, then we'll put a tariff on you. But what his ultimate aim is, he says, is that Americans are drinking no Italian wine at all.
Yeah, well, my point is it has nothing to do with fairness. I'm rather old-fashioned. I happen to think that consumers should be given the freedom to choose whether they want to have a very nice Napa wine. I've nothing against very, very fine U.S. wines, or whether they choose Italian wines. That's the meaning of a free and open trade.
Where do you think this one goes? Do you think if we take a more reflective look at how Donald Trump might handle talk of a trade deal, how far up the list do you think the EU is in terms of priority on a deal?
It should be very high. I mean, look, already the EU has tabled the elimination of industrial goods tariffs. By the way, that already happened in 2018. It's been on the table. When I was in office, we were already trying to negotiate the phased elimination of all tariffs on industrial goods. I say industrial goods because agricultural goods are far, far more sensitive on both sides. And an important point here that Donald Trump never discusses, not surprisingly, is that the U.S. has a lot of protectionist laws on its books. I can go through a very, very long list, but I don't want to bore your listeners. It affects maritime commerce, it affects our public procurement markets, and it affects our airlines and many other areas. So, you know, the EU has many protectionist laws, absolutely, but they have plenty of company, and so do we.
Oh, the line has gone quiet, Anthony. Apologies, we've just dropped the line there. Oh, hello. You're back with us. Apologies. We lost you there just towards the end, the last 15 seconds of you.
Sorry, no, I was going to say, apologies for that, look, the EU has a lot of protectionist laws on its books, of course, and I have scars on my back because I try to eliminate some of them in agriculture, but the U.S. does as well, as I was saying in the last bit. In public procurement, maritime commerce, involving telecoms. And so, you know, Donald Trump never mentioned this, but this is a negotiation that will necessarily be very, very complex, particularly in agriculture, because this affects, you know, raw cultural issues on both sides of the Atlantic.
Look, thanks for being with us. Really good to get your perspective on it, as ever. Anthony Gardner, thank you, former US ambassador to the European Union under Barack Obama, who's in Italy at the moment too. Thank you for being with us.